Hi guys. In the previous video, we saw how to create the library constructors in the EDK2. So today we will see how to create the destructors in the EDK2. Okay. So I will go back to the same specification which I have provided earlier. Okay. So if I scroll to the end, so here you can see it's exactly similar to the constructor, but the only difference is within the INF file. So instead of specifying the keyword as a constructor, we used to provide the keyword as an destructor. Okay, so when this destructor is going to be executed at the end of your driver execution. Okay, so meaning if I draw a diagram. Okay, so now assume this is the lifespan of your UEFI driver or the entire boot phase. Okay, so this is where we turn on the system, maybe the sec phase. Okay, and this is the BDS phase or the OS phase. Okay, so now let's forget about this sec. Okay, and the PI as well we can forget for now. Okay, because in the previous video we created the constructor for the Dixie phase. Okay, so now assume our Dixie phase is started from this point. Suppose say time 0 in seconds. Okay, so assume the sec phase will end at a time x and assume this PI phase will end at the time y. Okay, so and then the Dixie phase maybe suppose ends at the time z. Okay, so now within this time span between the y and z, the Dixie drivers are going to be executed. Okay, so there are multiple Dixie drivers. Suppose say one after the other, each drivers is going to load, right? So now let's pick one driver. Okay, so now if I take one driver as an example, okay, so this is the one driver execution time. Okay, so now so in the INF file we used to provide the entry point for a driver, right? So assume that entry point is going to start from at this phase. Okay, but whereas our constructors are going to be called at this phase. Okay, so meaning the constructor will get called first. Okay, and then the entry point will get called, and at the assume this entry point is going to be finished somewhere here, and then the destructor will get called. Okay, so meaning the constructor will get called for a particular driver first, and then the module entry point of the driver and the destructors of the driver. Okay, so why the constructors are used? To initialize something before the driver getting loaded, and the destructors are used to de-initialize something which we had initialized earlier, which is not needed for the further boot process. Okay, so now let's see how to create the destructors. So let me open the same source code. Okay, so in the previous video, emulator package, library. So this is the constructor which we had created. Okay, so now I will replicate this and I will call this as Dixie sample 3 leaf. Okay, so I will rename the C file as well and the INF file. Okay, and the base name instead of 2, I will use the 3, and library class name instead of 2, I will use the 3, and the destructor name I will use this as 3. Okay, and here instead of using a keyword as a constructor, we should use a destructor. So I will copy the keyword and I will paste it here. All should be caps. Okay, and then so the source file name, what is the C file name? It's a Dixie sample 3 lib. Okay, so Dixie sample 3 lib. So now our destructor, so the name we are going to call the value is a function name. Okay, so I will copy this function name and I will go back to the C file, and here I will say Dixie sample 3 destructors. Okay, so let me rename this. Okay, and then I will rename this API. Okay, and here let's add 50 plus 50. Okay, and here it is coming from the destructors. Okay, so now we have to include this in the DSC file, right? So it should be under emulator package.dsc. Okay, so what is the library class name? This is sample 3 lib. Okay, followed by pipeline character, emulator package, library, Dixie sample 3 lib, Dixie sample 3 lib dot inf file. Okay, so let me use the cpu.inf as an example. So where we had the constructor, right? So let me add the comment. Okay, so now this is a destructor, right? So before I run this module, so let's see what is the AutoGen.c file will specify for the cpu.inf. So the path here is emulator package CPU runtime Dixie. I'll go to build folder, IA32, emulator package, CPU runtime Dixie, debug, AutoGen.c file. Okay, so now this is a constructor, and here we have the Dixie sample toolib, which is this constructor. Okay, and now here we have this destructor list, which is an empty list. Okay, and now when this will get called, so this will get called during the exit driver, meaning whenever the execution of this CPU unit is getting completed, and then this exit driver will get called, and if there is any error, then the destructor will get called, and then the exit services is going to happen for this driver. Okay, so now let me build it. Open the command prompt, EDK setup, build. Let's wait for a moment. Okay, it's about to complete. Yeah, it's completed now. So if I go back to the same autogen.c file, so here now this time if I go back to this function, you can see we got the new destructor, which is Dixie sample 3 destructor. And the definition of this function, it is coming from here. Okay, so now let's run this. I will go to build folder, IA32, open the command prompt, winhost, redirect to boot.log, redirect everything. Okay, so it is booted. Okay, so I will close this, and then I will open the boot.log, and now let's see whether this message got printed here or not. Okay, it did not get printed because if we look at this autogen.c file, so this destructor list will get only called when the exit driver status, if it is throwing an any error, then only the destructor list will get called. Okay, so looks like the CPU INF is successfully executing with the return status as success. So due to which the destructor is not getting called. Okay, so now let's introduce an error and then we'll see. Okay, so I'll go back to the CPU.inf. Okay, suppose say EFI underscore not found I will give for now. Okay, so now I'm what I'm doing. So I'm forcefully returning the status as not found during the exit of the entry point. Okay, so now let's build it again. Okay, it is builded. Open the command prompt, do the same thing. Okay, so this time you can see it got exited. Okay, if I go back to this boot.log, here you can see we got the status as not found. But before the status is getting not found, you can see our Dixie sample 3 destructor and it is showing the result as 100, right? So meaning when this destructor is get called, when there is any error within this module and that error it is to return as from the driver, and that point of time the destructor will get called. Okay, so which is matching with this condition. During the exit driver it will check for the status. If there is any error, then the constructor will get called and it this exit function will halt the system. Okay, so in case of release BIOS, it will simply boot further without hanging the system. Okay, so what we learned today? So we created the destructor library class by replicating the constructor, and then we went through the autogen.c file, how this destructor list will be shown, and then we booted, and then we'll see when this destructor is getting called. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you.